Okay, let's unpack this. Imagine trying to write a complete sentence in a language you're still mastering. It's tough.
Yeah, it's like building something complex when the instructions aren't quite clear, or maybe they're for a slightly different model.
Exactly. And today we're diving deep into that exact challenge. We're looking at the specific kinds of errors learners make when they're writing sentences in English.
And we've got a really interesting source to guide us. It's a research paper. It looked closely at high school students writing in Makassar, Indonesia. Specifically, paragraph writing, looking for sentence structure errors.
Okay.
And what's really useful here is the method they used. It's this framework called the Surface Strategy Taxonomy. It helps classify how the errors actually appear.
So it's not just finding mistakes, but understanding the type of mistake.
Precisely. It helps see the patterns.
Right. So our mission for this deep dive, using just this paper, is to figure out what those patterns were. What were the common stumbling blocks for these students? What do these error types tell us about learning to build English sentences?
Yeah, and you might find some of this familiar if you've ever learned a language. Or
Mhm.
maybe it'll give you some aha moments about English itself.
Could be.
The paper really stresses that writing is fundamental communication, right? And sentences are the basic units.
Makes sense.
So if those units are flawed, the whole message can get confusing or lose its meaning. The source points this out. And for these students, the paper notes the grammar differences between Indonesian and English likely play a role.
That's a key point. Your first language always kind of echoes in the background.
Yeah.
So tell us more about this taxonomy they used, error analysis,
Yeah.
using the surface strategy taxonomy.
Yeah, think of it like a way to sort the errors. Instead of just saying wrong, it asks, how is it wrong? The source mentions it's practical because it helps visualize the learner's process, how they're trying to figure out the rules. It looks at how the sentence they wrote physically differs from a correct version.
Okay, so what are the main categories? How do they sort these errors?
The paper focuses on four main types. First, there's omission. That's leaving something out that's needed.
Like a missing word.
Exactly. Then there's addition, putting something in that isn't needed, something extra.
Right.
Third is misformation. This is where the right kind of element is there, but it's in the wrong form, like the wrong verb tense or plural ending.
Okay.
And the last one is misordering. The words are maybe okay, but they're in the wrong sequence in the sentence.
Got it. Omission, addition, misformation, misordering. So the study looked at the student writing, found 52 errors in total. What was the overall breakdown? Which categories popped up most?
Well, when they tallied everything, two categories really stood out, misformation and misordering.
Those last two.
Yeah, they were actually tied. Each accounted for almost 29% of all the errors found.
Wow. Okay, so together that's nearly 60% of the issues.
Right. Omission and addition were less common, both around 21%.
That's interesting.
Mhm.
So it wasn't primarily about just leaving words out or adding extra ones, though that happened. The biggest challenge was getting the word form right and the word order right.
That's what this specific study suggests, yes.
Let's dig into those two big ones then. Misformation, using the wrong form. What kind of things did that cover?
So within misformation, the paper highlights one type as being particularly common, regularization.
Regularization, what does that mean exactly?
Think of it like over-applying a rule. You learn a standard rule, like adding ed for past tense, and then you apply it everywhere, even to irregular verbs where it doesn't fit.
Oh, okay. Like saying good instead of went, or childs instead of children.
Exactly like that. The paper give an example. Mall have 3 floors. Instead of mall has 3 floors. The student used have, the form you'd use with plural subjects, but mall is singular, so it needs the irregular form has. They're applying the more regular pattern incorrectly.
That makes perfect sense. They know a rule, just not the exception or the specific context.
Right. The paper also mentions other misformations, like using the wrong pronoun. An example was disappointed the people who support him.
Should be who.
Should be who, yeah. So it shows difficulty choosing the right form for the job.
Okay, so wrong forms, a major hurdle. And tied with that was misordering putting words in the wrong sequence. That feels pretty fundamental.
It really is. Word order is crucial in English. The paper gives a really clear example here. Mall is big a building.
Mall is big a building. You can understand it, but it sounds off.
Right. It should be mall is a big building. The article a and the adjective big are swapped relative to the noun building.
Yeah, that's a clear word order slip-up. Why do you think word order is such a common problem?
Well, the source hints at this word order varies hugely between languages. If your native language puts adjectives after nouns, for instance, you might naturally try to do that in English until you internalize the English pattern. It's about retraining your brain's sequencing habits.
Makes sense.
Oh,
Okay, so misformation and misordering were the top two. What about the others? Omission, leaving things out. That was about 21%.
yes, omission. And the study found some really specific patterns here, too. The most frequently omitted item, the verb to be.
Really, like is, are, was, were.
Exactly. An example given is, in the mall, there are many stands. The paper corrects it to, in the mall, there are many stands, focusing on that missing or incorrect to be.
Huh. Like saying he happy instead of he is happy.
Precisely that kind of structure. Another example was omitting implied subjects or pronouns like and is on the mainland of Asia, which needs an it, and it is.
Why do you think to be gets dropped so often? It seems so essential.
Yeah. The paper links errors generally to lower mastery and L1 influence. In some languages, you don't need an equivalent verb in the same way for simple descriptions or locations, so learners might just not hear the need for it initially or haven't grasped its function fully in English.
Interesting. What else was omitted?
Articles a and they were also commonly left out. The example was Indonesia has different ethnic instead of Indonesia has a different ethnic. Well, again, many languages don't use articles like English does.
Right, another classic learner challenge. Okay,
Yeah.
so that's omission. The flip side was addition, also around 21%, putting extra things in.
Exactly, adding things that aren't needed. The most frequent type here is called simple addition, just adding an unnecessary word or morpheme.
Like what? Any examples?
The paper gives Indonesia have a lot of flora. Now, we already talked about have versus has under misformation, but here the source seems to categorize the overall incorrect structure or perhaps the presence of a lot of, where maybe just much or many might fit differently, as a form of simple addition. It's about unnecessary complexity or items.
Okay, a bit nuanced there.
Yeah, the lines can sometimes blur. Another addition type mentioned was double marking, like saying, I like small.
Ah, adding the S to like even though the subject is I.
Right, you're marking the verb unnecessarily because I takes the base form like. It's redundant.
So, addition might be over-applying a rule you just learned, or maybe carrying over a structure from your first language that requires an element English doesn't.
Could be either, or both. It shows learners are actively trying to construct meaning using the resources they have, even if it results in adding something superfluous in English.
So let's pull this all together. We have omission, addition, misformation, misordering. Misformation and misordering were the most frequent issues found in this study. What's the big takeaway from this error map?
Well, the study concludes pretty clearly that these students were, still facing significant challenges in building grammatically correct English sentences.
It's not just random noise.
No, definitely not random. The types of errors, the problems with verb forms, plurals, word order, forgetting to be or articles, these point to specific weak spots in their grasp of English grammar rules. And the source suggests this connects to both their level of grammar knowledge and, importantly, the influence of their first language.
It really does make the idea of grammar mistakes much more concrete, doesn't it? Seeing examples like mall have 3 floors or mall is big a building really highlights the specific hurdles. It shows learning isn't just memorizing. It's this messy, active process of trying things out.
Absolutely. And understanding these common patterns can be super helpful, whether you're learning English yourself, maybe teaching it, or even just appreciating the complexity involved.
Yeah, seeing where the errors typically happen gives you insight into the learning journey itself.
And it reminds us that errors are, well, they're part of the process. This taxonomy turns them into useful data, showing us exactly where learners are grappling with the system.
This has been really insightful, digging into the mechanics of language errors using this study. We've seen the 4 main types from the surface strategy, taxonomy omission, addition, misformation, misordering, and seen that for these students, getting word forms and word order right were the biggest challenges.
Indeed. And as we wrap up, thinking about how learners predictably wrestle with a new language's structure, here's maybe a final thought for you to ponder. This idea of predictable error patterns isn't just about language, is it?
What do you mean?
Well, how does understanding the types of common mistakes change how you view learning any complex skill? Think about, say, learning to code or play the guitar or even a sport. Are there similar identifiable patterns in the errors beginners make as they try to get the hang of the rules and structures of that skill? Something to think about.